was a real exchange of good feelings. You know, the connectedness, whenever I share with all my buddies that circumstantially I meet, it spreads out, it takes the wrinkles out of the clothing. It's like ironing the personality. I exchange with everyone I meet what I lack and what I have in excess of. It takes the wrinkles out. Trying to find my way to synchronize with the wind and my breathing with the wind. The wind's coming in big pulses, and so I'm feeling that and trying to just let myself fall into that as my primary input. There's a lot going on around us that we can't see. There's the depth of the cave, the quietness of the cave. There's the sound of the bees, which basically is inaudible under the sound of the wind, but I'm sure that that sound is present. The sound of the hum of the hive, is only 20 feet from us. And if the wind wasn't apparent, then we could hear the bees from here quite easily. I've been whistling since I was probably an 8-year-old child. My earliest memory of whistling is on a road trip with my whole family, and we were going to, I believe we were going to New Hampshire from Massachusetts. And I would be in the back seat with my two sisters. My parents would be in the front seat. And as part of my self-occupation, I was whistling. And it was bothering my father tremendously because he was driving, and having somebody whistling behind him constantly was irritating to him. And so he would, tell me to be quiet. And in response, I would whistle softer and softer until it was just barely audible. And that insistence by my father to whistle quieter, to be quiet, caused me to have fantastic breath control. I learned so much from that admonition, that the ability to control the breath and control the mouth so that you could still whistle, but it would just be barely audible. And so that was my earliest memory of whistling. Whistling is my companion. It is something spoken by the unconscious to my conscious mind in solitude. So it's part of the dialogue. I do talk to myself a lot, and that is another part of the overt dialogue within my mind. There are many different components to my mind, and so the voice of each of them speaks a different language, but whistling is an auditory, you could say it's almost like an auditory hallucination. It's generated in the Broca's Center spontaneously, just as, dreams are generated. I can't really speak authoritatively on that, but dreams being generated while we're sleeping, and then thoughts being generated in the prefrontal cortex. There's different parts of the brain, and they each have their signature language. I'm much less likely to whistle if I'm uptight. I noticed that when my last lover was living with me, and I was getting uptight with her, that I would go for a week or two without whistling, and I would suddenly notice that I haven't whistled, in a long time, and I'd be like, man, I'm uptight, I'm really uptight. If I can't whistle, if I don't whistle spontaneously in the car while walking around or nothing, I'm uptight. So it's sort of a signature of that state of mind of being fixated on what bugs you. I think the way it helps me more than anything else is as a form of emotional expression. My personality has been from the origin fairly emotionally suppressed. I'm very mental. I come from a, puritanical, repressed sexually, kind of a cold, hard, perspective. This is the culture of my family. They were fairly cool emotionally and not expressive, and I definitely grew up with that. And so I think the whistling actually evolved as a way of emotional expression that other people might sing or use their language and their voice for quite naturally. But since I didn't develop that, I think this is a filler for that, a replacement for that. There's a whistling, a staccato whistle that I use by tapping my cheek. There's a kind of kazoo sound by whistling and humming at the same time. That if I get the tone right on the hum, it sounds pretty good. That wasn't very good. So I think that whistling as the sound of this movement of air from the inside and the outside across a barrier to an interior from an exterior place is an amazingly vibrant and extensive symbol. And we could take it further into the boundary between the conscious and the unconscious, what we as humans are aware of and how we perceive the world we live in contrast to the world, the universe as it actually is, which none of us can actually know in totality. It is at best a feeling to connect to the totality of the universe, just as it is a feeling to drift into the unconscious as we sleep. These are proximate zones of awareness, and they both have depth. The depth of our consciousness, to the outer limits of technological resource, and then the depth of our unconscious, the outer limits of the mythic, the psychological, the suppressed, and all the other elements that comprise being human.